Hello, we're in England and we're going to just discuss a Esposito gouache watercolour, Esposito if you like. The Espositos collectively are a generalisation, this is when it comes to England. Esposito is a generalisation for a type of picture and a manner of painting and colourway often, and subject often. And often Esposito relates to the type of picture and the origin of the picture more than the actual artist. So it's really complicated. There are many different Espositos. There are in Malta some well-known ones, for example Vincenzo, but when you get up to Naples and Italy, then you have Gaetano. And once you start to look at the word Esposito, it gathers in and trawls all sorts of varying types of painting, and obviously they're not from one artist called Esposito or Esposito. So you have to be very careful when you're buying them. The best Espositos commercially really are the Gaetano Espositos, which are not signed with a D apostrophe, usually signed with a full Gaetano and a full Esposito. He doesn't abbreviate the Christian name, and he uses really nice big signatures in red. Paint he uses mainly oil paint, painting buoys with crabs and lemon pickers and fishermen in the Bay of Naples and around there. And then you have another Esposito, G, with a D apostrophe, who does gouaches of naval boats, some military, some not, some Italian, some English, British, sorry, and other nations. So visibly different types of picture, visibly different signatures using the same surname, but in England you find they're all lumped in. The auction will say it's an Esposito, and they'll think of southern Italy and leave it at that. Usually, even the big auction houses, even Christie's made a mistake this last year. They incorrectly catalogued at least one Esposito. So you have to be careful with the name. You have to look for the D, if it's there or not. You have to look at the initial, the monogram, the Christian name. You have to look at the material he's painting with, the medium. Is it oil? Is it watercolour gouache? What is it? You have to look at the subject. Is it Malta? Is it Naples? Is it somewhere else? And many of the Maltese and Neapolitan painters had a twin market. They had the tourist market and they had the local or distinguished buyer market, or the exhibition market, if you like. So you'll find an ordinary painter like Vincent D'Esposito painted tiny touristic, throwaway almost cigarette card sized paintings, and at the other end of the spectrum he painted really big, detailed, good quality gouaches of boats in the harbour, in the Grand Harbour. So there is this spectrum of work, and the same applies to Girolamo Gianni, the same applies to Joseph Gallia and the other Gallias, and the same applies to the Bonellos. And there is this twin market. Is it being painted for a big house of Valletta, to a noble? Is it for an exhibition? Is it a wedding present? Is it for a member of the family? Is it for a shop in Malta? Or is it to be sold on the dockside to a merchant vessel with 100 seamen in it? Is it to be sold at the beach from a basket? Is it to be sold from the market to a tourist who won't want to spend much money? So at the cheap end, you've got fairly mass-produced touristic paintings by Vincent D'Esposito, Joseph Gallia, the other Gallias. There is still a Gallia shop now, Edwin and all those, and they are made in batches. So I spoke to a member of the Bonello family, and he said that his grandfather used to paint them in 20s and 30s. He used to lay out the cards, do all the seas, do all the outlines, do all the skies, do the pinks, do the masonry, do the characters, do the costume, and it means that there's less time wasted washing brushes and mixing colours. So the cheap ones were mass produced, and the bigger they get, generally, the better quality they are. But you can buy large Espositos which are rushed and slightly touristic. For example, if they're painting a Maltese boat, whether it's a Lutzer or a Daiso or Tafuril, I don't know the name. If they're painting one of these boats here in solitude, they can paint quite a big one if they don't put in the land, because if they're painting a sail and a hull and they're painting a sky and a sea, the sky and the sea are essentially the same colour, and obviously if they're not painting the background, they'll be able to knock these out. They can often be a pair of boats facing each other, one will be at dusk, one will be at dawn, or whatever. So you'll soon be able to tell the difference between the rushed ones and the better quality ones. All of the Espositos, or most of the Espositos, will take out the background to make it easier. For example, D Esposito, just D Esposito, will often paint a fraction of the real land and not put the land in behind the boat to confuse the rigging. So they're all using tricks of the trade, knacks, to get the stuff, to get the throughput and to get the stuff sold. So this one here is a medium range one. It's not one of the junky cigarette card ones. It's not one of the huge ones for a discerning buyer or collector or a resident or someone high up in the military. This is for either a top-end tourist or an ordinary resident of Malta. A resident may be English or maybe a local person. And I guess this was painted about 1910 and it's been framed in about 1970. And this is a very characteristic hand-coloured mount you get in England. It could be Maltese, but it's in England, and I suggest it was painted. It was framed in England. The frame is an ordinary frame. It's a metal effect frame, not gold leaf. The thing about this picture is you have this panoramic profile, which is characteristic of many of the Valletta scenes you'll see. For example, L.M. Gallia, Luigi Maria Gallia, not the Joseph crowd, painting these scenes, and they use this panoramic shape. It's not a normal size piece of paper to paint on. It's particularly Maltese or Neapolitan shape, and the colour, this bright sunny colour, is not a colour people paint in England, because there isn't anyone like that in England. You'll find English painters using the colour if they travel. You'll find people in the south of France using the colour. You'll find Victorian or 20th century China station English paintings of the Far East, Singapore, gouaches out there, for example, using these colours. But this is quite a distinctive Neapolitan or Maltese colour. If you're in a sale room and you see a wall of pictures and you see that shape and that colourway, it's usually Maltese or near Malta. So you've got the Grand Harbour, very popular to sell. People hunt them down and they're a lovely thing to look at, evocative of Malta. And in this case, you have Grand Harbour. You have small waves, which means it's not just been chucked on the paper. You have a decent cloud. You have pinks in amongst the blues. You have a Maltese Lutzu, which is a rowing boat, but the Maltese rowers will stand and they will row it somewhat like a gondolier will in Venice. Not quite the same, but similar. You have a fishing boat with the distinctive sails. You have open sea, lighthouse, breakwater, Fort Ricasoli, R-I-C-A-S-O-L-I. That is a late 18th century castle fort built to the east of Valletta with the most fantastic gate. If you go and see it, it's colossal. You really wouldn't believe how big it is. And that is still there, and that's how it looks now, except it's run down slightly now. The place is a film studio, and the ditch has got some oil tanks in and things like that. There's a golden sand beach here. So it's a really interesting place. And seagulls, a pleasant view. A single picture, not a pair. Now, the price with Malta inside it, the price is high. Without Malta, they're not so high, unless they have a good signature. So there's no point buying one without a signature necessarily, because it could be usually one of a number of lookalikes. Sometimes he just does the D, especially on the small ones. So what you're looking for is Maltese boats, which are distinctive from other Mediterranean boats. You're looking for often the shape, particularly if it has the bastions in. You can't easily make that into squarish picture or portrait shaped picture if you have this flat masonry. So there are things to look for: signature, subject, place, location, building. And if you want to save money, you'll buy them without Malta in, and you'll buy them with a more rushed technique. He has a way of throwing the sails up with a few strokes. He has a way of using larger waves and washes without clouds. For example, in some of these boat ones I've seen, he won't put clouds in. The sail will dominate the picture. Some of the small cars, he will just chuck on the masts and chuck in by dubbing the actual characters. So the different qualities of painting by these artists, and if you take the time on it and compare it with what is sold, you can look up what's sold in the auction house and see what they're worth. And it's a very enjoyable pastime. Prices of these are going high. You need a signature, and as I say, you need to nail it to Malta. Many of the Maltese painters do travel to Italy and around there, Sicily, and for the Maltese collector, that they don't really necessarily want to have a picture of Naples or a picture of a temple in Sicily. They want to have a picture of their own country. Okay, so that's Vincent D'Esposito. Thanks for looking.